Hello. So this is Assad, and I'm going to be continuing my tutorial on how to construct a compositional layout in an iOS app in UI kit, and to include a photos displayer ability inside of the app so that we can show some photographs from our photos inside of a collection view in a grid-like format. So I'm back in my Xcode project, and if you can sort of remember from last time, so I basically had some issues with my Git. The status of the files was constantly changing from there was a question mark next to the file names, which I think meant something like the file wasn't being added to source control, or Xcode didn't had trouble figuring out where the file was. So what I did was I deleted the project, and I made a repository on GitHub, and then I cloned that repository and I opened a new project and I created it inside of that cloned repository on my machine. And that resolved the issue. I tried a bunch of different fixes, like creating a Git index inside of the folder of the project, which didn't work. So I'm still going to be investigating this issue to find out why creating Git repositories using Xcode is causing these kinds of issues on my Mac. But maybe, that's for a different video if I ever get to record something about that. So this is the project that I was working on last time. So I've recreated it inside of this same project name, but different project. So this is, as a reminder, kind of what I was trying to build, which is I just want to have a collection view with a section inside of it. So the collection view uses compositional layout. It consists of a collection view with a section, with a group, and the group has 3 items, and they're all supposed to be aligned in a grid-like format with equal heights and widths. So here I am back in my project. So I've reached the point where I've sort of rewritten the file for the photos displayer view controller. And what I want to do next is to set up this collection view with my data source. But first, I just still haven't, done the step of actually adding my collection view using Storyboard. So I'm going to do that first, which I didn't do in the previous video. I just kind of had it in there. So you're going to see an extra step in this video. So I'm going to click here on my view controller scene. And I'm just going to click the plus icon here, and I'm going to look for a collection view object here. So I'm going to put collection view, I'm going to put collection. So I'm not looking for the controller because I have a separate view controller managing this collection view. So I'm just going to click and drag the collection view into my scene here. And I'm going to just add some constraints. So I'm going to click this icon here, add new constraints. And I'm going to set all 4 top, leading, bottom, trailing constraints to 0, which means that they will have 0 spacing to the safe area layout guide by default. So if you click the down arrow here, it's safe area selected, current distance 244. So this is going to change to 0 when I click add 4 constraints. So I'm just going to click on add 4 constraints. As you can see, the layout kind of reorganized itself with this blue box around it, which is touching the edges of the scene and the top edge of the safe area layout guide and the bottom edge of the bottom safe area layout guide. Yeah, so here I have a collection view cell, right? Okay, which I'm gonna try and keep, see, hopefully it doesn't like cause issues. I'm gonna keep this collection view cell and I'm gonna add it to my, configuration. Okay, so the first thing I said I would do was connect the collection view to the one here, but you can tell if I try this. So if I control click from if I just click and drag from the outlet, here nothing will happen. So the first thing I need to do is go to my view controller and go to the identity inspector and change the class from view controller, like any generic view controller, to photos displayer view controller, and hit enter. So now my class for this view controller that's managed by this scene here is the photos displayer view controller. So now I can click drag from this outlet to my collection view with no issues. Okay, so we're at this point now. So when I actually run the app, I'll be able to manage different properties of the collection view. So for example, I can say photos collection view in my viewDidLoad method dot collection view layout equals create compositional layout. I'm gonna learn here, create compositional layout. So this is gonna create the layout for this collection view the way that I defined it in this function. If you were watching my first video, you'll notice that I actually had this code probably in a view is appearing function. I'm working on an app in parallel to this, something I plan on publishing to the App Store. And I was using this method view is appearing inside of a navigation controller. And I noticed that whenever you drag down and up and drag the navigation controller, which is presented as a modal screen, when you drag it down and up, it calls the view as appearing. Every time you do that cycle, it calls view as appearing, even as the modal is on the screen itself, which wasn't, ideal because I had my sort of some of my data source methods in the view as appearing. Maybe I had also the create compositional layout in there. So this was causing issues, like it was appending the data to my data source, as many times as I was dragging down and up the modal, it was doing that, which wasn't ideal because that was eventually replicating the data in the UI. I did some research about why this happens and just, found out that view is appearing is called after view will appear and before view did disappear. And it's mainly used for when you need to present data, when you want to present data that needs to be refreshed while the view is appearing, this is a good place to do it. But for actually maybe creating the view, this isn't the ideal place to do it. For creating the view both and also updating the initial data source. So we're gonna skip this. I moved that code from this method to just viewDidLoad. So I'm gonna use this method moving forward. So I'm going to use this method moving forward. So in here I have my photos collection view dot collection view layout equals create compositional layout. So this is going to create this layout with that grid kind of organization that you saw earlier in the Figma representation. Right, so the next thing I typically do when I'm setting up a compositional layout is I just call I have something like a create data source method in my class, in my view controller class. So I'll have a function here, name it create data source. So the function of this create data source is to one, connect the data source to my collection view, and to kind of I was gonna say register my collection view cell, which we might need to do part of that code. So I'll say register collection view cell, right? And maybe so configure dequeuing the collection view cell. So this is going to be my create data source method. Okay, so how do I go about doing this? So I declared my data source here. So I'll just say data source equals yeah, this is nice. So it just kind of auto suggests what the class for that data source should be. But it's, yeah, I'll just read it. UI collection view diffable data source section and collection view. Yeah, this was the one I was going to use. Right, so this probably returns or this closure here expects a collection view cell, but let's just verify that quickly. So I can go to this here and go to my this here, and I'll go here, data source, initializer. So AI overview, the primary initializer is init collection view cell provider. This initializer takes a UI collection view and a cell provider closure as parameters. The cell provider closure is responsible for configuring and returning cells for the collection view based on the data provided by the data source. And if I click on the link, there's two kinds of sources. One is, I believe this is sources. Why is it possible to write the etc. Stack Overflow? And then init collection view cell provider. This is the one I want, so I'll go look here. Creates a diffable data source with the specified cell provider and connects it to the specified collection view. So the initializer takes two parameters. One is the collection view, and then the other is the cell provider, which is marked as an escaping closure, right? Or just escaping UI collection view diffable data source. Section identifier type, item identifier type, dot cell provider. So if I click on cell provider, type alias. So this is a closure that configures and returns a cell for a collection view from its diffable data source. And this closure so consists of three parameters. Again, I was going to say this like closure takes 3 parameters. I'm not sure that's the right terminology to use with closures, but this closure, so let's say, I might be wrong saying this, but takes 3 parameters. So one is a collection view, index path, item identifier type, and expects a UI collection view cell of optional type. So we know what we need to return inside of the closure. So I'll go back, just so we can, read this here. So parameters, collection view, the collection view to configure this cell for. Index path, the index path that specifies the location of the cell in the collection view. Item identifier, an object with a type that implements the hashable protocol the data source uses to uniquely identify the item for the cell. I was just reading about hashable protocol actually, just before recording this video. So if you like, it's a really interesting protocol. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to read about it. But basically, it's responsible for like, if you have a type that conforms to hashable, then that type becomes uniquely identifiable because the hashable protocol has like a hash into function, which uses a hasher that combines the values that you pass into the hasher function and returns back like one integer value which uniquely identifies the object that you're working with. So I think this is like kind of essential to how the diffable data source functions. It's still a bit of a mystery to me how like under the hood how the data source maybe how it uniquely identifies objects, let's say in a snapshot. That's something I'm still, developing my understanding about. Okay. So return value non-nil configured cell object. Cell provider must return a valid cell object to the collection view. You use this closure to configure and return cells when creating a diffable data source using init collection view cell provider. Okay, so I'll go back to my Xcode project. So here I want to have a cell. So say let's cell equals. So again, the helpful kind of want to suggest. So I'll hit tab to accept this suggestion. Collection view.dq reusable cell with reuse identifier photo cell for index. So this is an optional. So I can say like guard let cell equals this, else like return a fatal error with a message that says no cell with reuse ID available, exclamation mark. And then I'm going to, not here, return my cell. So the compiler is complaining initializer for conditional binding must have an optional type, not UI collection view cell. DQ reusable cell. Okay. Must have an optional type, not UI collection view cell. So it's saying this doesn't return an optional, right? Okay, this is not an optional, so I can't really use the guard let here. Do that. I just want to check if there's a DQ configured reusable cell using cell registration. Okay, so this method here, DQ configured reusable cell, has an extra sort of parameter, which is this uses a cell registration. So ignore the Xcode, autofill kind of thing. But yeah, this takes a cell registration, which we do not need. So we're not going to use this. We're just going to use this. So collection view.be queries in the cell with reuse identifier for index file. And return this cell. I just want to make sure, so in my photos display view controller, I'm going to select the cell, collection view cell, and go to my, so I'll just confuse the names of these. So this is the identity inspector, and this is the attributes inspector. Okay, so I'm going to go to my attributes inspector, yeah, and type the name of the identifier, which is photo cell, and enter. Okay, so this is like already registered with my storyboard. So my storyboard is going to take care of registering the cell for me. I'm not going to have to manually do like a cell registration here. Okay, so it's going to do that, and then we're going to be able to dequeue the cell. So I'm just going to like have a cell dot background color equals dot magenta to just see what it looks like on the screen once we load once we run the app. Just kind of make sure that everything's working as expected. Okay. So yeah, so register, no, this we don't need. We don't need the register. So it's just connect the data source, configure dequeuing the collection. So, okay, so this happens in two steps. In one step. So these two steps happen in one step. When you like assign the collection view difficult data source, here this like yeah, so like when you assign this, maybe like a class, so let's say difficult data source, this, yeah. Object you use to manage data, provide cells for a collection view. Okay, good. So when I provide this class, let's say, to my data source, this connects the collection view, which is one of the arguments of the closure that this class provides. That connects the collection view to the data source, which is step one, and then this takes care of configuring dequeuing the cell here. Okay, so the third thing I normally do is after creating my data source and configuring the cells, so I normally would like apply the first state of the data to my data source. And by state, I mean whatever like initial kind of status my data object has. So at the moment it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You know, if you're running like some other app where you have like, let's say, a button on your screen where a person taps like add a photo, add photo, add photo, then this data might change from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that you know, updates the data and you know, changes the when you reapply, you know, the data the way it changed to your data source. That shows a change in the state of the data. So I'm going to have a function and I'm going to call it, so normally I call this something like update initial snapshot. And I'll have a function here, call it update initial snapshot. Okay. So the way you do this updating the initial snapshot takes place in 4 steps. So the first thing is you need to get like the current state of your snapshot. So whatever's like in the data source at the moment, that's what you need. So okay, I should clarify. So, you know, I was saying about the hashable, how the data source like manages identity under the hood. So I just said that snapshot, like we have the initial state of the snapshot, so which is good, you know, but again, I'm not like 100% sure how like diffable data source, like where does it, so the one question that arises in my mind is where does the snapshot like get its state from? So okay, let's continue. I think we're gonna like have an answer while we code. So snapshot is in its diffable data source snapshot section, and so the second thing is we need to append the sections to our snapshot. So I'm gonna say, so this is my section enumeration, which is int case main. So my enumeration is section. The raw value type is int, and it has one case, which is main. So I can say something like snapshot dot append sections. Okay, so see, it says identifiers. So here, append sections. There's no like parameter name. There's just an argument label. I think, you know, if I didn't mix those two together, but because I always get confused, like which one is the parameter name, which one's the argument label. I've yet to learn the difference, or like to know how to distinguish them, you know, after even like 5 years of writing Swift code. So I'll say like this, yeah, it doesn't have the parameter name, it just has an argument label called identifiers. And when it says identifiers, it's referring to the section identifiers, which we defined here in the diffable data source snapshot, which in my case is section. So this section identifier type needs to conform to hashable and sendable. Sendable, I'm not too 100% sure, again, like what it does, honestly. You know, I'll read up on that later. But for the hashable type, so it needs to be, you know, because of the definition of hashable, which I was saying I just read about a moment ago. So the hashable needs, the conformance to hashable means that we provide like a set of variables for our structure or the type, whatever it is. It can be a class, structure, enumeration, type, to the hasher function inside of the hashable protocol, which will in turn combine these values and produce a unique integer value, which the data source, and as the whole data source snapshot, or not the snapshot, but maybe the UI collection view diffable data source object will use to uniquely identify the section. So the section here, again, is the section identifier type, and I'm using section, which is an enumeration here. So you see that section here doesn't have a explicit hashable conformance, so it just has a raw, like the raw value is integer. So the reason being that sections gain automatic conformance to hashable so long as the associated types, right? Or sorry, the associated values for each case are also hashable and equatable, which in this case I have no associated values related to my case main here, so I'm good to go. I don't need to explicitly conform section to hashable. This is just automatically done by the compiler, which means that the collection view diffable data source can distinguish between different section instances with ease. So I'm going to say snapshot.append sections. So identifiers here, I'm going to say just dot. So it's going to be an array of identifiers. So this is the second step. I need to add the sections to my snapshot. Now for the third step. So I'm gonna append the items I need to my snapshot. So there's one of two ways here that you can do this. You can either add the items to the snapshot, directly to the whole snapshot, or you can add the identifiers just to one section inside of the snapshot. And I'm going to try the second approach. So I'm going to say snapshot dot append items. I'm using this identifiers to section option. Just because it's more specific, I think it makes sense to use it in this case, because we're dealing with one specific section. So I'm going to say append items, and here it's going to be my data. So we can rename this to numbers. So I'm going to say append items numbers to section main. Okay. So I was saying earlier about the snapshot, the identity and state of the data in the snapshot. So I'm not gonna make claims about how the identity works here, because I don't really know. When we append the items that we have to the snapshot, this basically kind of provides an initial state for the data. I can say that, I guess. Or no, I can just say, snapshot, adding the items provides an initial state for the data in the snapshot. I think that's more accurate. Okay, so the fourth thing is we just apply the snapshot to our data source. So we use, so again, the data source has two methods two ways for, or two methods for applying this. So you either apply it like data source apply snapshot to a section, right? So it's like data source apply. Yeah, so it's like snapshot to a section, or you just apply the snapshot like for the whole like data source. Okay. And when I say whole, I mean, so rather than specify which section you need to apply the snapshot to, you provide no section information, which means that you like update the whole data source, mainly, not just one section inside of it. I shouldn't just say that because I'm like kind of, you know, rushing to that conclusion in my own mind. But you know, that deserves some more kind of research to say like, you know, like what is the difference between applying a snapshot to like my data source versus applying the snapshot using a section, something like that. So AI overview, applying a snapshot to a data source in the context of NS diffable data source snapshot. In iOS development means updating the entire data set of a collection or table view, reflecting changes to sections and items. Applying a snapshot using a section snapshot, on the other hand, allows for targeted updates to individual sections within the data source. Okay. So let's see what we have done here. Apple's article. Okay. Oh, this would be interesting. The undocumented facts of difficult data source section. This would be like an interesting read. Save that for later. Like, how do you like? Oh, there's a save. I never knew you could actually save articles. So I'll click save to favorite pages. Just because I don't want to read through it, you know, I imagine it'll be like a lot of reading to do while recording the video. But yeah, so this overview says, like if you update the snapshot for the whole, like if you update the data for the whole snapshot, kind of like that, you end up updating like all of the data in your collection view or table view. Again, I'm still like, you know, jumping to kind of certain points. Again, more reading is required, so I'm not gonna mention more. Member only story. This would be another interesting read. Despite introducing Swift UI with iOS 13, Apple still brought in a slew new changes to the UI kit framework. Among the standout features were the enhancements to UI collection view. Okay. Okay. Yeah, fortunately, can't read this. Maybe here. Understanding difficult data source, and its difficult data source snapshot. UI table view, okay, conforms internally. I'm just skimming through this. Let's talk a little bit about this. See the snapshots and UI changes. This is the section of the rest you want to see on screen. National objects. Setting up difficult data source. Okay, some provider, creating snapshots. Let's try a project. Okay, this doesn't really go into much detail, so I can go back. Okay, I'll just close that and go back to the project. So, okay, you know what? Why don't we just, skim that article that we saved? So how do I do this? Favorite pages. How do you get there? In here. Favorites. Is it in bookmarks? Favorites? I think it was a favorite pages thing. Wasn't in bookmarks. It was like shared with me. No. Reading lists. No. Maybe here. Yeah, it's not in the reading list. So I'll just, go back here. It's okay, I'll just re-click here and go here. So this is annoying, so I click saved, and I don't know where it saves. Okay, I can figure that out later. Let's read, yeah. Default data source section snapshot is a UI kit component introduced in iOS 14. It opens up new possibilities for developers to build various types of hierarchical lists using quick collection view declaratively. Yeah. Even though it's such a powerful component, Apple's official documentation does not provide much information on how it works and how to use it effectively. I wouldn't entirely agree with this statement. Like Apple provides tons of documentation about how it works and how to use it well, including like this sample project you can download, which is called, I think, Modern Collection Views. And it goes into like great detail about how to create compositional layouts for various use cases. So it's very well documented in this article. I would like to share with you some interesting facts. Let's get right into it. Visual descriptor. When working with the section snapshot, so it's important to know that he goes straight into like section snapshots. So he's focusing on case 2 of the 2 like methods we were talking about. It's very important to know the hierarchical structure as well as the content of the section snapshot. Therefore, Apple has shipped a visual descriptor alongside the NS-diffable data source section snapshot generic struct. By leveraging the visual descriptor, we can easily write an ASCII representation of the section snapshot to the Xcode debug console. What's even better is that it is extremely easy to use. Just call the visual descriptor description instance method, and that's it. The image below shows a collection view constructed with a section snapshot with 3 root items and its visual description output in the Xcode console. Okay, this is interesting. So I see like, his simulator here with this, he has like 3 maybe 3 I'm not sure, like 3 perhaps parts, like one is parent, like one has some children inside that go under a parent, and the parent has like a expandable thing. Okay. Snapshot creation. Okay, visual. Here. Okay, this should be interesting. You will first create a snapshot with a main section and then apply the desired section snapshot to the main section. So create snapshot with main, then apply to data source. Snapshot is NS-diffable data source snapshot. Section data item. snapshot.append sections main, data source.apply snapshot. Section. So here he's getting a snapshot from the data source, or creating a new snapshot, not getting it from the data source, because he's using this like initializer. So I should go and check this one. Unstable data source. Okay. NSDiffable data source snapshot. So this is a representation of the state of the data in a view at a specific point of time. So this is like one of the very basic kind of types that we need to be familiar with. Okay, so NSDiffable data source snapshot is like number one we need to think about when we think about diffable data source. Representation of the state of the data in a view at a specific point in time. So this is available on iOS 13 plus, iPadOS 13 plus, Mac Catalyst, tvOS 13 plus, VisionOS. Great. So what is it? Struct. It's a structure, and it takes two generic parameters: section identifier type, item identifier type, where both conform to hashable and sendable. Okay. Diffable data source uses snapshots to provide data for collection views and table views. You use a snapshot to set up the initial state of the data that a view displays, and you use snapshots to reflect changes to the data that the view displays. This is related to what I was saying about state. So you can think of state basically as changes to the data. You can substitute this with state, it'll mean kind of the same thing. Okay. The data in a snapshot is made up of the sections and items you want to display in the order you determine. You configure what to display by adding, deleting, or removing the sections and items. Important. Each of your sections and items must have unique identifiers that conform to the hashable protocol. Use structure, enum, Swift value types for your identifiers, including built-in types such as int, string, or UUID. If you use a Swift class for your identifiers, your class must be a subclass of MS object. To display data in a view using a snapshot, 1. Create a snapshot and populate it with the state of the data that you want to display. 2. Apply the snapshot to reflect the changes in the UI. You can create and configure a snapshot in one of these ways. Create an empty snapshot, then append sections and items to it. Get the current snapshot by calling the diffable data source snapshot method, then modify that snapshot to reflect the new state of the data that you want to display. For example, the following code creates an empty snapshot and populates it with a single section with 3 items. Then the code applies a snapshot, animating the UI updates between the previous state and the new state. So their example here of creating of how to create a snapshot. Let's just summarize what we read first. So the snapshot kind of shows the initial state, or sets up the initial state of the data, which a view displays, and reflects changes to the data that the view displays. So a snapshot is gonna show how my data was at one point in time, and also how it, mutates at various points in time. The data consists of sections and items in the order that you determine. The way that you append the sections and the items to the snapshot kind of determines the way that they appear actually on your screen. So the order in which you append sections and items is important to keep that in mind. So each of the sections and items must have unique identifiers that conform to the hashable protocol. Right. So, I think that the data source uses the hash value property of the hashable protocol to identify the items uniquely. I could be wrong. We could find out, but let's just continue reading this so we don't diverge into many different directions. Use structured enum Swift value types for your identifiers, including built-in types such as int, string, or UUID. If you use a Swift class for your identifiers, your class must be subclass of an assumption. Okay, display data and a view. So these are the steps to go through. So you want to create the snapshot, insert the data that you want to display. They say the state of the data. Okay, so by that they mean like, you know, a representation of the data at a fixed point in time that you want to display. Apply the snapshot to reflect the changes in the UI. Great. So after creating the snapshot and populating it with the data, we can apply the snapshot. Okay, so one of these ways, one is creating an empty snapshot, then append sections items, or get the current snapshot by calling the diffable data sources snapshot method, then modify that snapshot to reflect the new state of the data you want to display. Okay, so these two ways are you either create an empty snapshot or you get the current snapshot. Either way, you need to modify the snapshot by like either adding sections, removing sections, adding items, removing items to update the way you want it to like show the items on your screen. So back to their example here. So var snapshot equals ns diffable data source snapshot. So they're using approach 1. They're creating an empty snapshot. You know, but arguably, if you call snapshot on your data source before you ever supply items to it, you also get an empty snapshot by definition. So it's the same thing. Snapshot is ns diffable data source snapshot into ID. Populate the snapshot. So add sections, add items, you know, snapshot.append sections, 0, snapshot.append items, UID, instances. Apply the snapshot, data source.apply snapshot, animating difference is true. For more information, see the diffable data source types. So this is the ns diffable data source snapshot. So this refers to the snapshot. And then there's diffable data source, okay, types. So UI collection view diffable data source, UI table view diffable data source, NS collection view diffable data source. You know, you can easily see how these types, their names overlap. They can be a bit confusing. At least they are to me. Bridging. You can bridge from an NS diffable data source snapshot reference object to this type. Let snapshot equals snapshot reference as NS diffable data source snapshot into ID. Okay. Yeah, this is fine. We don't need to read through this. Okay, so I'll close that and go back to the article. So, create snapshot with main sections. Snapshot equals NS diffable data source snapshot section data item. Great. Snapshot.append sections main data source.apply snapshot. Create and construct a section snapshot, then apply to main section and data source. So why is he creating two snapshots? I'm not really clear on that. So here in the next part of the code, var section snapshot equals NS diffable data source section snapshot data item. Section snapshot.append parent data item 1. Section snapshot.append child data item array 1 to parent data item 1. Data source.apply section snapshot to the main animating response false. Yeah, it's not really clear why he's doing this in the next step. This is pretty clear, like he's creating an empty snapshot, then adding the section. Notice that he's not adding any items here though, so he's just creating a section and adding that to his data source. Okay. Above code isn't wrong, however, there's redundancy. Apparently, you can totally skip the snapshot creation part and apply the section snapshot to the data source straight away. This is because when you apply a section snapshot to the main section, UIKit will be smart enough to create a snapshot with the main section automatically for you. Thus, the above code can be simplified to the following. So I am not like super in agreement with what the author is saying here, that we can't just rely on UIKit to say that it's smart enough to create a snapshot with the main section automatically for us. While that may be true, it's certainly not the way that's recommended by Apple, so I would just veer away from this. Above code can be simplified to the following: create and construct a section snapshot, then apply to main section and in data source. I'm gonna not read that because he's given us an idea of how his thinking works. Section snapshot is always available. Mention you do not have multi-section. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm just gonna have to skip the rest of this article just because I'm not really happy with how the author is relying on UIKit to manage some of the snapshot creation for him, her. Okay, so please. So back to this AI overview. So this says applying a snapshot to a data source and applying it via a section both involve updating the data in a view like a table view or a collection view, but they differ in scope and how the data is structured. This is a pretty good synopsis. Applying a snapshot to the data source updates the entire data set represented by the data source, while applying a snapshot via a section allows for updating a specific section within the data source, potentially with its own distinct set of items and structure. Maybe this would be a useful kind of thing. I was actually reading this today. So this person is saying, while it's technically possible to use section as the section identifier, this is undesirable most of the time. These identifiers help the data source figure out what to animate when you apply a snapshot. The whole data source finds the difference between existing snapshot and the new snapshot you applied. If you use the section's items as the section identifier, that means every time an item is added, removed, changed, that section's identifier changes. That means the section with the old identifier is removed and the new section with the new identifier is added. The data source would animate the removal of that whole section and the insertion of a new section in its place. If only the section's title is the identifier, the data source would know that the section hasn't changed, and it will only animate the insertion, removal, change of that particular item. While end results are the same, the animations are different. Okay. So continuing with this response, so applying a snapshot to the data source. This method updates the entire data set that the data source manages. I think I read this one. Let's not go back to the Apple article, or should we? Haven't we read this one? Unestifable data source snapshot reference. No, this is something else. Okay. A representation of the state of the data in a view at a specific point in time. Diffable data source uses snapshots to provide data for collection views. Use the snapshot to set up the initial state, and use snapshots to reflect changes to the data that the view displays. Data in a snapshot is made up of the sections and items you want to display in the order that you determine. You configure what to display by adding, deleting, or removing sections and items. Each of your sections must have unique identifiers. This seems pretty identical to the content we read in the article about an estifable data source snapshot. But this is a different class. It's called snapshot reference. And it seems to be using Objective-C, while this is Swift. If I switch that here, let's see Objective-C. No. Okay. Yeah, I'm not, you know, I don't know like Objective-C, so I can't really read this. Although just, you know, append items with identifiers, UUID, I don't know. Okay, after working, reference. Okay, I'm just gonna take a break and I'll be right back. Hello. So yeah, so I'm back, and we were saying that this article wasn't really helpful because it was more or less the same content that was before. We read in an article before about NS-diffable data source snapshot. This is a different class name, but I'm not really sure from reading it what it refers to. So I'll go back to this tab. So applying a snapshot to the data source is suitable when you need to reflect changes across the entire view, such as adding, deleting, or rearranging sections or items. We've already covered this article, so the data source handles the animations and UI updates based on the differences between the current and new snapshot. If I go back here, if you use the sections items as the section identifier, that means every time an item is added, removed, changed, that section's identifier changes. That means the section with the old identifier is removed and the new section with the new identifier is added. The data source would animate the removal. Okay, we've read this one. This is typically done with NS-diffable data source snapshot, which manages the entire data set. So there is this distinction between NS-diffable data source snapshot, which we've read, and then there's an NS-diffable data source section snapshot, which is a different class. So we can look up NS-diffable data source section. Oh, and I already have this open in a different page, but I want to open it here. So NS-diffable data source. So this is part of UIKit, NS-diffable data source section snapshot. It's a structure, not a class. I think I said class, but it's a structure. NS-diffable data source section snapshot. Is this one? Oh, this is a class. Interesting. So this one is a class, and this one's a structure. Okay. Representation of the state of the data in a layout section at a specific point in time. Available on iOS 14 plus, iPadOS 14 plus, Mac Catalyst, tvOS 14 plus, visionOS. Pre-concurrency, not sure what that means. Struct NS-diffable data source section snapshot, item identifier type, where item identifier type is hashable and item identifier type is sendable. A section snapshot represents the data for a single section in a collection view. Through a section snapshot, you set up the initial state of the data that displays in an individual section of your view and later update that data. You can use section snapshots. Just a moment while I connect my laptop. You can use section snapshots with or instead of an NS-diffable data source snapshot, which represents the data in the entire view. Use a section snapshot when you need precise management of the data in a section of your layout, such as when the sections of your layout acquire their data from different sources. Okay, so we can have like an app, and each app might have a section. For example, I can have an app where like I, you know, can have like a bird watching app where I can get like my names of the birds with their images from a certain like data store, and then I can like have the sounds that they make. I can have those from yet a different data store, but those will actually probably be all in the same section, so probably not a very good example, but yeah. You can also use a section snapshot to represent data with a hierarchical structure, such as an outline with expandable items. So another good example might be like let's say I have an app about like crystals, and this is already on the app store, so I'm just referring to an app I already know, but it's about like identifying crystals. So you can have a section that's like has just the photos of the crystals, and it tells you like this is real versus fake. And then you have like another section that kind of shows you a map of where you can find these crystals. So these sections likely would have like different sources of data, like where they're getting the data from. So it would make sense to organize them in separate sections. So then this might be useful, like if I'm updating one section, then then I might use this approach where I'm using the section snapshot instead of the data source snapshot type, just to manage those separate sections, each one on their own, with their respective data sources. So I can obtain the data from one data source for one section, apply it in one method, let's say, then obtain data from another data source. If they end up coming in like asynchronously, then I can apply them to separate sections separately. And this would eliminate the need to sort of refresh my whole like screen, because I'm just updating the sections one at a time. You can also use a section snapshot to represent data with a hierarchical structure, such as an outline with expandable items. So this is like when you have those navigation views, let's say, you have like let's say like an emotion, for example, like in an emotion tracking app, you might have like, let's say like anxiety or something, and then related emotions like, like depression, anger, resentment, the list goes on. So you can expand those sections or not. Okay, the following example creates a section snapshot with one root item that contains 3 child items. For section and section dot all cases, create a section snapshot var section snapshot equals unestifable data source section snapshot string. Populate the section snapshot dot append food drinks, section snapshot dot append apple emoji, strawberry emoji, croissant emoji to food. Apply the section snapshot. Data source that apply section snapshot, true section, animating difference is true. Okay, I'm just going to pause again because I have some tea boiling, so I'll be right back. Hello. So I have my tea and can continue. So we were saying that this NS diffable data source section snapshot is a structure, while the NS diffable data source snapshot is a class. And I can use this NS diffable data source section snapshot when I'm updating the sections based on different data sources. Okay, so different sources of data, meaning like different sources of information about something in my app. Like if I'm presenting a crystal, then I can say these are the images in one section, and then I can have like the location where I can find these crystals in another section. Okay. Right, so continuing here, applying a snapshot using a section. This method allows for updating a specific section within the data source, offering more granular control over individual sections. It's useful when you need to update only a specific section, perhaps because it has its own data source or needs to be handled separately, which is what we were reading right now in this article here. That we can just, if we want to update only one section, we can use the data source section snapshot. You use diffable data source section snapshot for managing the data within a single section. This is helpful when sections in your layout might have different data sources or updated independently. Okay, we've gone through these both articles. Key differences: scope. Data source snapshots affect the entire data set, while section snapshots target a single section. Complexity. Data source snapshots are generally simpler for broad updates, while section snapshots offer more control for targeted updates. Use cases: use data source snapshots for general updates and section snapshots for managing sections with unique update requirements. Yeah, same two articles. Okay, positive feedback. This was really good. Thank you. Okay, so I can close all of these. Go back to my app. So here we were saying, so snapshot dot. So we have our snapshot, which we're initializing using NS diffable data source snapshot section data, and so I can easily, swap this with data source dot snapshot. This is a for section, right? For section, so for main, and this should return an empty data like snapshot for my main section. What does this say? Reference to member main cannot be resolved without a contextual type. Value of type NS diffable data source section snapshot int has no member append sections. Right. Because this is a section snapshot. Reference to member main cannot be resolved without a contextual type. What if I close? Okay. This alert occurred with this code. And I have no idea what it means. Dot alert is presented showing alert title. That's error message. Let in default text. Anyhow, please. Add this error message because the brackets were not correctly paired. Your code works. Versions also work. Okay, I'm not sure what this means, so best not, change this. So I'll just revert back to my, just what I had before. Okay, so snapshot is NS diffable data source snapshot. So this creates an empty section, empty snapshot, like a brand new one. And then I appended the section main, and then snapshot dot. I added the items numbers to my main section. So then I can say data source dot apply snapshot. So because this is a my snapshot is just a NS diffable data source snapshot, I need to use this apply method, the one that takes an NS diffable data source snapshot. This isn't the NS diffable data source section snapshot, so I wouldn't be able to use this method, for example. So we need to use we need to apply the snapshot, which gets the snapshot for the state of the data for the entire data source. Yeah, NS diffable data source snapshot. I need to read this one more time. So this is a representation of the state of the data in a view at a specific point in time. This is a structure, NS diffable data source snapshot. Diffable data sources use snapshots to provide data for collection views and table views. So let's go back up a little bit. So part of UIKit structure, NS diffable data source snapshot. A representation of the state of the data in a view at a specific point in time. So this is available on iOS 13+, iPadOS 13+, Mac Catalyst, tvOS 13+, visionOS. So structure, NS diffable data source snapshot takes two parameters, section identifier type, item identifier type, where section identifier type and item identifier type both conform to hashable and sendable, right? Item identifier type sendable, item identifier type hashable, section identifier type. Yeah. Okay. Diffable data sources use snapshots to provide data for collection views and table views. You use a snapshot to set up the initial state of the data that a view displays, and use snapshots to reflect changes to the data that the view displays. The data in a snapshot is made up of the sections and items you want to display in the order that you determine. You can configure what to display by adding, deleting, or removing the sections and items. Okay. Important, each of your sections and items must have unique identifiers that conform to the hashable protocol. Use struct or enum Swift values types for your identifiers, including built-in types such as string or UID. If you use a Swift class for your identifiers, your class must be a subclass of an object. To display data in a view using a snapshot, create a snapshot and populate it with the state of the data you want to display. Apply the snapshot to reflect changes in UI. You can create and configure a snapshot in one of these ways. Create an empty snapshot, then append sections and items to it. Get the current snapshot by calling the diffable data source snapshot method, then modify that snapshot to reflect the new state of the data that you want to display. For example, the following code creates an empty snapshot, populates it with a single section with the 3 items, then the code applies the snapshot, animating the UI updates between the previous state and the new state. So they're creating a snapshot, var snapshot, NS diffable data source. So my question is basically like this snapshot object that we have. So snapshot is NS diffable data source snapshot. Does this apply to the whole kind of like the whole of my data source, if that makes sense? So I can say like, does NS diffable data source snapshot apply to the whole of my data source? This is the same article we were just reading. There's a Stack Overflow post about reload items. I'm having difficulty finding the use of NS diffable data source snapshot reload items. If the item I asked to reload is not equatable to an item that is already present in the data source, I crash with terminating ABD2 on code exception, NS internal consistency exception reason attempted to reload item identifier that does not exist in the snapshot, project name, not class name. But if the item is equatable to an item that is already present in the data source, then what's the point of reloading it? You might think the answer to the second point is, well, there might be some other aspect of the item identifier object that is not part of its equatability but does reflect into the cell interface. But what I find is that that's not true. After calling reload items, the table view does not reflect the change. So when I want to change an item, what I end up doing with the snapshot is an insert after the item to be replaced and then a delete of the original item. There is no snapshot replace method, which is what I was hoping reload items would turn out to be. I did a Stack Overflow search on those terms and found very little, mostly just a couple of questions that puzzled over particular uses of reload items, such as how to update a table cell using diffable UI table view. So I'm asking in a more generalized form, what practical use has anyone found for this method? Yeah. I'm using the new NS diffable data source snapshot, and UI table view diffable data source with a UI table view. I'm having no problems building the table, but I'm having problems updating a cell when the data is shown and it changes. I haven't found any Apple documentation explaining how to do this. I've tried the following. self.currentSnapshot.reload items. Identifier. Self.dataSource.apply self.currentSnapshot. I get the following error in reload items. Assertion failure and UI default data source snapshot. Reload view updates for diff. Update data source, ignore invalid items. I have checked that the identifier passed to the item initializer already exists in the snapshot. Here's my item class. Class, item, hashable, equatable, identifier, string, var, match wrapper, init, match wrapper, self.identifier equals match wrapper, self.match wrapper equals match wrapper. Function, hash into hasher, and out hasher not combined, self.identifier, static function, equals left hand side scores, right hand side old, turn left hand side that identifiers, right hand side data. Any suggestions? I know this question is a bit old, but I thought I would chime in. I wouldn't recommend using classes for your item identifiers. That will get you into trouble because they are reference types. That might be the reason for your crash, but it's hard to tell without seeing where you are modifying your data. Also, you want to make sure that you are hashing and comparing equals all of the fields that you want to display in your cell. That's the only way the data source will know any fields have changed. If you have more questions, let me know. Do you mean in this case match wrapper must be part? Okay. Of the hash and equals operator, wouldn't that cause the data source to identify the updated objects where only the content of match wrapper has changed as a new item when the expected result is updating the existing item? So let's see, I've had similar problems, and after a lot of debugging and trying out different things, I've come to the conclusion that I don't think you should be using reload items. Reload items doesn't actually seem to do anything from my testing. The cell provider always provides the old data, and if you have a hash function based on an identifier and an equatable function that checks for equality on things other than the identifier, you get an error. There are two things you can try. If you really want to use reload items in the cell provider instead of using the data provided by the closure, use your own data source as the source of truth to lay out the cells. This sort of defeats the purpose of diffable data source in my opinion, though you end up missing out on some of the great functionality of diffable data source. Instead of writing code like this, var snapshot equals table view.snapshot, let item equal items index path.row, snapshot.reload items, item, array of item, you can do this. Let snapshot NS diffable data source snapshot section item equals dot init, assuming wherever you're storing your data is already updated. Snapshot dot append items. Okay, data source dot apply snapshot. This should refresh only the items in the snapshot that have changes. From my understanding, the current snapshot at the table view was compared with the newly created snapshot and only items that are different should be updated. Could be wrong here, but this is what has worked for me. Other suggestions I've seen: write your hash function combining all the values that can change in the view. Example, in the view x, ex. Function hash into hasher and out hasher, hasher.combine ID, hasher.combine name, hasher.combine title. However, if you go this route, this means that reload items will throw an error reporting that this doesn't exist in the data source. You'll have to add this. Delete the old data manually. This is a really good answer. It's a very good explanation about how to like update your snapshot, or more how to benefit from, you know, the built-in capabilities and, you know, the power that diffable data source provides, really, which is kind of starts with the ability to like refer to items using the closure that you create in your cell provider class, and get the data from there instead of having like a view model and then getting data from there inside of your code. Yeah, so this is very good. I've not come across this before. Going back here, so I'm asking in a more generalized form. What practical use has anyone found for this method? Well, there's nothing like having a minimal reproducible example to play with, so here's one. Make a plain vanilla iOS project with its template view controller and add this code to the view controller. I'll take it piece by piece. First, we have a struct that will serve as our item identifier. The UUID is the unique part, so equatability and hashability depend upon it alone. So we've got the struct uni bool hashable. It has a UUID, bool property, and a hash function. Hasher.combine UID, okay, equality function. Next. So I'm gonna stop recording now, just because it's late and I need to have some dinner. And I'll continue this tomorrow. Okay, thank you. Bye.